If you're moving to the West Houston area, you've probably got your eye on some beautiful pieces of real estate that you've seen online. But if you don't know the area and you don't know which neighborhood you're looking at, you may end up finding yourself wanting to move in a year. So today I'm going to walk you through which areas in West Houston are a great place to live and which areas you might think twice about before you buy. Hi, my name is Carolyn Bauerschlag, your friendly neighborhood realtor right here in the Houston area, and I've helped hundreds of people just like you relocate from all over our country right to our great city. And if you're thinking about moving to the area, I would love to add you to our client family. Now, first up is Hockley. You've probably seen some great communities pop up in your online search that are called Jubilee or the Grand Prairie or Everly out in the Waller County area. But what you may not know is that Waller County is experiencing explosive growth. Now, growth isn't always a bad thing, but as we've seen in other areas like in Brookshire, too much growth too fast can really present a lot of challenges. Now, something you may not be aware of is that almost all of these communities in Hockley are zoned to Waller ISD. And Waller ISD, by all accounts, is a great school district, but they cannot handle or absorb the amount of people that are coming into these new construction communities. So what we're seeing in Waller ISD right now is overcrowding. And this is putting a massive strain on facilities, on bus transportation, on personnel, on student-to-teacher ratios, which is really affecting the way that parents feel about the education that their child is receiving on a day-to-day basis. Now, I have a family that lives in Hockley, and what they told me is that even on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, just out of a random day in the week, they may get a text message that says, hey, we need you to come pick up your kids from school. There's no bus service today. Now, this is no fault of Waller ISDs. It's just no one could anticipate the sheer amount of growth that this place has been experiencing over the last couple of years. So if living in a community where the school district is already well established and fully in play is important to you, I would say you might need to reconsider Waller ISD. Now, Waller has announced that they're building a ton of new communities. In Jubilee alone, 2 new school sites have been announced, and those schools are actively being built. But here's the thing. As growth continues, eventually Waller ISD will need to go to the taxpayer and say, hey, we need more money to build more schools. Now, really, all these folks are doing is asking for a mortgage from the taxpayers, but technically they do have to ask for permission. And when those things called bond elections come up, people tend to think that their tax rate is going to go up, when in fact they're just asking if they can have some debt that they'll repay with your property tax bills, right? So the debt really never goes up for you, the taxpayer, but for some reason, homeowners will consistently vote against bond elections, which build schools. So if what you're looking for is a smooth piece of road to walk on from an education perspective, I would give pause to considering homes that are zoned to Waller ISD. Now, of course, there's benefits to living in Hockley too. One of the main ones is that these communities are trying to attract people out to the farther northwest region of the Houston area by having fabulous amenities. Jubilee, for instance, is considered to be one of the premier communities in the greater Houston area due to the lifestyle that they're trying to create with green living. So if energy efficiency and recycled water and those types of things are important to you, Jubilee is getting all kinds of popular press for that very thing. Now, another thing to be mindful of is that some of these news articles are engaging in a little bit of puffery, where they'll say, Hockley is the next Cyprus. And I would say maybe not. Hockley does have a great corridor as far as infrastructure goes. 290 has been expanded out that way. So it is really just a little bit further along the 290 corridor past Cyprus. The Grand Parkway is pretty decent up and down that northwest corridor or the north-south corridor as well. But Hockley is going to have a hard time with getting their things like their H-E-B. They're going to have a hard time with grocery stores, with restaurants, with all of the things that support the community that's coming in around it. So in my professional opinion, I think we'll see this community boom in the next 3 to 5 years in a really productive way. But I would say expect the next 3 to 5 years to be full of some growing pains. Now, the next place that I probably wouldn't move in 2026 is going to be Brookshire, Texas. And I don't mean to hate on Brookshire, but I would say that they're experiencing some more significant growing pains than probably we're even seeing in Hockley. Now, what Hockley has going for it is that they do have great infrastructure and decent school districts that just need help expanding. What Brookshire has, perhaps, is a smaller set of tools to work with. Royal ISD, unfortunately, is poorly rated by the state of Texas and by third parties like niche.com. In fact, we've seen them garner a C rating for their school district. Now, if what you're doing is moving out to Brookshire for a quieter lifestyle, you're moving out there for a lower cost of living, then I would say that this is a fabulous choice. But again, if you need to consider the education implications, Royal ISD is probably not what you're after. Now, there is a massive master plan community out in Brookshire called Sunterra, and Sunterra has done reasonably well as far as attracting people and building amenities for their homeowners. But Sunterra has also gotten themselves in a little bit of a quagmire too. Sunterra splits the difference between Katy ISD and Royal ISD over in Brookshire, and they're not really doing a great job differentiating which homes are zoned where. And not to be a cynic, but yours truly thinks that that is probably on purpose. So understand that if you are going to move out into that area, to be very careful about what home you're buying and which school district it's zoned to. Now, even if you don't have children, the reason I bring that up is that it does tend to affect the way that a home appreciates over time. The other thing that would give me pause about moving out to Brookshire is going to be the traffic. Now, Brookshire itself is about 25 to 30 minutes away from the city center of Katy. And Katy is already what some people would jokingly call West San Antonio. So our proper Houstonians complain about, it taking 45 minutes to get out to Katy, and you've got another probably 30 minutes to get to Brookshire. So if you choose to live out in that area, my hope is that your place of work might either be at home or centralized to that very West Houston corridor. If you do have to commute all the way in, you're going to have a hard time. Now, again, things like grocery stores, retail, medical, all of those kind of creature comforts that you would expect in any community are going to make their way west, but you're still reasonably probably 25 to 30 minutes away from even just those things. Now, the next homes that I might not buy in 2026 are going to be homes that are built by America's largest home builders, Lennar and D.R. Horton. Now, this kind of makes me sad, right? So for the longest time, Lennar had an exceptional reputation for putting together a beautiful home that stood the test of time, both in quality and really shone with affordability. If you remember the commercials Lennar ran, they used to say everything's included by Lennar. And they did, right? They had brick and gutters on all four sides. They had sprinkler systems, covered patios, high ceilings, solid wood cabinets, tile in all of the showers. Any amenity that you were really looking for really did come in a Lennar home. And this is not me trying to impugn the brand. I myself own and live in Lennar or Village Builders home that was built 20 years ago. And it looks exceptional. But when I walk through new construction homes that were built by Lennar in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 years, it breaks my heart. All of the things that made this brand the exceptional flagship that it was have functionally been stripped. I went and showed a client new construction homes out on the northwest side of Katy that was a Lennar, and we had no amenities. They had no garage door openers. They had 8-foot ceilings. We barely had any windows. There was no tile in the bathroom at all. There was no tile backsplash in the kitchen, no solid wood cabinets, and even the countertops themselves looked like graham crackers. Like, I don't consider myself to be an overly strong or tall person, and I felt like if I happened to lean on it the wrong way, it might crack in half. And my question really to anybody is, if you're allowed to get a 30-year mortgage or 30 years worth of debt on any product, shouldn't that product last you the full 30 years? When I was walking through these homes in Lennar, my honest to goodness concern was that these wouldn't hold up for even 2 or 3 years. And speaking of quality concerns, D.R. Horton is getting sued left, right, and center for exactly that. If you just Google it, what you'll see is that all over the nation, people are suing D.R. Horton for poor quality of construction. Now, this is something that I would say was more prevalent than Lennar's issues. Even 10 years ago, I could walk through a D.R. Horton home and say, hey, something here is wrong. We would see foundations fracture in D.R. Horton homes faster than we would see on any other build, right? So a foundation in Houston really should be problem-free for about 20 years. So when I'm walking through a home that's only 7 or 8 years old, 10 years old, and we're seeing separation in the drywall or visible cracks in the floor, that's a serious manufacturing problem, right? And unfortunately, those problems seem to have only gotten worse within the last 4 or 5 years. So I'll give you an example. When we drove through some of the communities in the West Houston area after Hurricane Beryl in 2024, most of the communities were fine. Now, the Woodlands did take a beating up on the north side, but on the west side, Hurricane Beryl was more or less a nothing burger, right? So it was a wind event, but barely. And so when we drove through neighborhoods, everyone's house mostly looked the same, except for these completely D.R. Horton built communities, and one of those out in Katy is called Tamaron. I went to go pick up a lockbox off a listing that we had sold about a week prior, and about every 5th or 6th house, huge sheets of shingles were laying on the ground, right? And there were tarps all over these roofs. About every fifth or sixth home, right? And directly across the street in a different neighborhood, those issues weren't there, right? So it's not just that a tornado blew through one street. It really is a quality of construction issue. And one of those things is like the roof sheeting material itself is called either an architectural shingle or it's called a 3-tab shingle. Now, the cost difference between the two is almost negligible, right? It's a few $1,000s here and there per home. But D.R. Horton cut the good shingle and put effectively wallpaper on the tops of these people's houses, right? And so in a moderate windstorm, you had shingles blow clean off the house, right? And I'm not crazy, right? There's a lawsuit in Alabama that alleges the exact same thing. You know, we had major destruction on our home that no one else really experienced in a moderate storm, right? So what I really want for any client is to make sure that when you buy a home, you are buying something that is quality. And new construction has had its challenges, right? So they'll tell you, hey, land acquisition costs have gotten really high, right? Like the cost for us to even buy this land to build this house has gone up. Our inputs have gone up. And all of those things are true. But what you shouldn't do is protect your profit margin in the name of quality and safety for the homeowner. And another home I wouldn't buy in 2026 is going to be a home that's in a community that's open to selling directly to investors. Now, call me crazy, but I would hope that a new construction company building homes would go straight into the hands of homeowners. And that's the way that it used to be, reliably. We used to see at closing, people sign off on something called an occupancy affidavit, right? So at closing, when you bought your new construction home, you would have to sign something that says, I, Carolyn, attest that I am buying this home for the purpose of me living in it. And when you see that and you don't know what you're looking at, it looks a little bit goofy. But the intent here is noble, right? What they're intending to do by having you sign this affidavit is ensure that these communities open to the idea of building exactly that. Community. People want to move into a place where they're handing over tens of thousands of dollars where they can lay their roots, build a family, meet their neighbors, have block parties, get to know people, have a sense of establishment and belonging, right? And that's hard to accomplish when every other home on a street is sold directly to an investor that's going to lease and turn over every single year. The other thing that these occupancy affidavits did was give homeowners a chance at competing against people with really deep pockets, right? So if you were someone who had a lot of cash and you said, I just want to buy up a lot of really great homes that have low maintenance that I don't have to worry about, you could go to a new construction community and say, I want to buy 10 of these, right? But what these occupancy affidavits do is they prevent that exact type of activity. So if you're a homeowner and this is your dream to buy your first home, you don't want to have to compete against somebody who has millions of dollars to spend on real estate. So this was another way that builders and new construction developers were really protecting people and the American dream. But unfortunately, what we've seen in the last couple of years is people serve at the altar of the almighty profit, right? So what I mean by that is that builders are looking at their bottom line. And when they weren't seeing the sales numbers that they were looking for, they were making elections to sell directly to investors. Now, this may or may not have been sanctioned by the master plan community, right? So the master plan community can have rules that say, hey, we don't care what your bottom line profit issues are. What we expect as the community, our community standard is that you do not violate our rule, which says don't sell to an investor. But here and there over the last year or so, we have started to catch wind of builders shirking that rule or trying to skirt that responsibility. And wouldn't you know it, even if the developer says no and someone buys a house and a for lease sign pops up immediately, what can that developer really do to enforce that investor from taking their house off the market? That question is still kind of out there, right? But we also saw developers do even worse. So in a lot of cases, developers said, don't do it at all. But in some cases, we saw developers say, hey, we don't care, sell direct to investor anyway. And one of these examples, unfortunately, is in Sunterra. Sunterra is in Katy ISD and Royal ISD on the far west area of Katy. And this was really kind of a heartbreak. So Sunterra opened in 2022 to a lot of fanfare. They were going to build really great housing, mostly zoned to exceptional schools. They were building this great crystal lagoon and have amazing amenities for homeowners. And about 12 to 18 months into their build process, we were cycling into the harder parts of the downturn from the COVID boom, right? So end of 22, early 23, that's when the rubber started to meet the road. And wouldn't you know it, this developer made an election to say, we don't care who you sell these homes to, we just want to move this product. And unfortunately, Centera basically greenlit all of these builders selling directly to investors. So fast forward to 2025, I'm trying to resell a home in this neighborhood, and I looked at the market data, and at the time of that resale, there were 175 homes listed for lease just in that community. And that is staggering. And when I talked to my homeowner about what they were experiencing, they said, Carolyn, we don't ever know who our neighbors are. And isn't that sad, right? They moved to that area specifically to have access to the great schools and to have their kids be able to play with folks in the cul-de-sac, to get to know their neighbors, to have a good time in the place where they live. And when you open that directly to investors, you lose the opportunity to really build the very community that you're technically trying to make. In the last couple of months, I have caught wind of some builders kind of cheating the system in some developments. And we've heard of that over in Cross Creek West, over in Jordan Ranch, and even in Fulshire Lakes. So what does this all mean for you? If you're considering a move in the West Houston area, make sure and call me, your friendly neighborhood realtor who knows exactly what's going on in all of these different pockets. My interest is to make sure that you find a home that you can love not only today, but that will do well for you over the next several years. If you're thinking about moving to the West Houston area, make sure to reach out to me with my phone number and email listed below. And if you found value in the content that we put out today, make sure to click the link below and subscribe, because we put videos like this out every single week. See you soon.